In graph 29.1, we illustrated the idea of a utility possibility frontier. But implicitly we assumed in that graph that we can redistribute endowments in any way that we want to within the Edgeworth box. We'll now consider some real-world limitations to this, and what implications this has for the shape of utility possibility frontiers. Recall that we translated specific efficient allocations in the Edgeworth box into utility levels that we then plotted in a graph with utility for individual 1 on the horizontal and utility for individual 2 on the vertical. Since these were derived from efficient allocations, there's no way to start at one of these points and make both individuals better off. The entire utility possibility frontier is then derived in exactly this way, taking each of the efficient allocations from the contract curve in the Edgeworth box and translating it into a utility pair that it implies for the two individuals. But this implicitly implies that we can redistribute endowments within the Edgeworth box to get to other efficient allocations if we don't like the one that the market placed us on. But redistributing endowments is usually not possible in the real world, but instead we're restricted to using distortionary taxes to redistribute income. Suppose then that we find ourselves in the extreme situation where individual 1 has all the endowment in the economy, and in order to get utility for individual 2, we have to redistribute income from individual 1 to individual 2. If this is done using distortionary taxes, there'll be deadweight losses, so we won't be able to reach the blue utility possibility frontier. Instead, the actual utility possibility frontier that is achievable using distortionary redistributive taxation will lie inside the utility possibility set that we previously identified. In our discussion of taxation earlier in the text, we discussed a concept known as the Laffer curve, that is to say, a curve that illustrates the relationship between tax rates and tax revenue. This curve suggests that we can hit a tax rate such that the taxed individual will actually adjust behavior sufficiently so that tax revenues fall as the tax rate increases. If this is the case, then this limits even further the utility possibility frontier that can emerge in the real world. In our extreme example, where individual 1 initially owns all the endowment in the economy and redistribution is required in order for individual 2 to get utility, it implies that the utility possibility frontier at some point attains a positive slope. The blue utility possibility frontier is called a first best utility possibility frontier, where first best assumes that we have access to lump sum transfers that we can make between individuals. The green utility possibility frontiers are known as second best utility possibility frontiers, where second best means that we're using distortionary redistributive taxes that entail deadweight losses. Both types of frontiers assume that we can measure utility of individuals, which throughout the text we've said we generally don't think we can do. As a philosophical matter, we can imagine that we could measure utilities and then argue which point on the utility possibility frontier we would choose on the different philosophical criteria. In more practical contexts, we might instead use wealth or income as the measures for individual 1 and individual 2 on the two axes.